The Master Mason. On the highest symbolic rungs of spiritual development stands the Master Mason, a position equivalent to a doctorate in the school of esoteric knowledge. In ancient symbols, the Master Mason is represented by an old man, leaning on his staff, with a long white beard upon his chest, and deep, penetrating eyes veiled by his philosopher's brow. Indeed, he is an old man, not in age but in wisdom and understanding, which are the only true measures of age. Through years and lifetimes of labor, he has at last found the staff of life and truth upon which he leans. He no longer depends on the words of others, but on the still voice that springs from the depths of his own being. There is no more glorious position for a man than that of Master Builder, who has risen through labor, through the various degrees of human consciousness. Time is the difference between eternity and time, a concept invented by humankind to measure the passage of human events. In the spiritual realm of nature, he is the space or distance between stages of spiritual growth, and therefore cannot be measured by material means. Often a young man manages to penetrate the high world of Grand Master of a Masonic school, while many times a respected and honorable brother passes silently to eternal rest without ever having been admitted to such a threshold. The life of the Master Mason is saturated, vibrant, and overflowing with the experience gained in his slow pilgrimage toward the highest rungs of the ladder of knowledge. The Master Mason embodies the power of human intelligence, that bond which links heaven and earth together in an endless chain. His spiritual life is greater because he has developed a higher means of expression. Even above constructive action and emotion, the power of thought hovers, swiftly spreading its wings toward the source of light. Intelligence is the highest form of his human expression, and thus, he passes into the profound darkness of the inner chamber, illuminated only by the fruits of reason. The glorious privileges of a Master Mason are in proportion to his greater knowledge and wisdom. From student he has blossomed into a master. From the realm of followers or disciples, he has passed to the small group of those who must point the way. For him, the heavens have opened, and the great light bathes him in its splendor. The prodigal son, so long wandering in the region of shadows, has returned once more to the Father's mansion. The voice speaks from the heavens, its power, which stirs the master to the very depths of his being, seems to saturate him with his own divinity, and says, "This is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased." The ancients taught that the sun is not a source of light, life, or power, but a means by which life and light are reflected in physical substance. The Master Mason must, in truth, be a sun, a great reflector of light that projects through his organism, purified by periods of preparation, that glorious power which is the light of the lodge. Truly, he has become a spokesman for the Most High. His place is between the resplendent and burning light and the world. Through him passes Hydra, the great serpent, symbol of wisdom, and its mouth pours down upon man the light of the Lord. His symbol is the rising sun, for in the Master Mason the star of the day rises in all its splendor, emerging from the darkness of night, illuminating the immortal East with the first announcement of the approaching day. With a sigh, the Master sets aside his tools. For him, the temple is nearly finished, the last stones have been placed, and he extinguishes the lime, with a vague sadness, as he watches the dome and minaret rise as the work of his own hand. The true Master does not allow himself long rest, and as he realizes his days of labor are over, he feels melancholy weigh upon his heart. Gently, the brothers of his guild accompany him, each in their own way, and ascending hesitantly, step by step, the Master stands alone at the temple's summit. One stone still remains to be fitted, but he cannot find it. It is hidden somewhere. Then, he falls to his knees in prayer, asking for the power to assist him in his search. The sunlight flashes upon him, bathing him in celestial splendor. Suddenly, an inner voice says from the infinite, "The temple is finished. The missing stone is my faithful master." Both points of the compass now rest upon the square. The divine has been freed from its prison, mind and heart, both liberated from the symbol of mortality, like thought and emotion, unite to glorify the most great and the supreme. Then sun and moon unite, and thus the Hermetic degree is consummated. The Master Mason is granted opportunities far beyond those available to ordinary men, but he must not fail to recognize that every opportunity also brings a greater responsibility. It is far worse to know and do nothing than to have known nothing at all. The Master Mason understands that he can no longer shirk responsibilities, but that every problem that arises must be faced and resolved. The only joy in the Master's heart lies in seeing the fruits of his own labor. Truly, it can be said of the Master that he has learned joy through suffering, laughter through pain, and life through death. The purifications and trials of his previous degrees have so spiritualized his being that he is a glorious example of the plan of creation for his children. The greatest sermon he can preach, the greatest lesson he can impart, is to be a living testament to the eternal will. The Master Mason has not been ordained, he is a natural product of cause and effect, and only those who experience the cause can experience the effect. The Master Mason, if he is truly a master, is part of the invisible powers that guide the course of life. As the elder brother of the lodge, he is the spokesperson for the spiritual hierarchies of the order. He no longer follows the direction of others, but rather he is the one who charts the plans that his brethren must follow. He is aware of this, and lives with the feeling that every stroke, every plan he creates, is the fruit of divine inspiration. Above all else, there is his glorious opportunity to be an instrument for the betterment of others. He kneels in the propitiatory position, like a loyal servant of the Most High, within himself and capable of regulating the lives of others, having first regulated his own. Much has been said concerning the lost word of the Master, and seekers pursue it only to return with imitations. The true Master Mason knows that he who sets out on this quest will never find the secret truth far from himself. Only he who seeks it within himself can find it. The true Master Mason has never lost the word, but has kept it, cherishing it, in the spiritual secrecy of his own being. For those who have eyes to see, nothing is hidden. For those who have the right to know, things are like open books. The true word of the three Grand Masters was never hidden from those who have the right to know, nor has it been revealed to those who did not prepare a reliquary capable of containing it. The Master knows why he is the builder of the temple. The philosopher's stone goes with him because, in truth, it is the heart of the phoenix, that extraordinary bird that rises with renewed vigor from the ashes of its decaying body. When the Master's heart is as pure and white as the diamond he wears, then he becomes a living stone, the royal jewel in the diadem of his brotherhood. The word has been found when the Master himself is ordained by the living hand of the Creator, washed in living waters, baptized with living fire as a priest, according to the order of Melchizedek, the one who is above the law. The great task of the Master Mason may be called the art of equanimity. He has been given the task of balancing the triangle, which he can ignite with the glory of the sublime degree. The threefold energies of thought, desire, and action must unite in a harmonious temple of expression. He holds in his hands the three keys. He wears upon his brow the triple crown of the ancient Magi. For truly, he is the master of heaven, earth, and hell. Salt, sulfur, and mercury are the ingredients of his work, With philosophical mercury he seeks to combine all powers to glorify a single end. Beyond the degree of master lies another, unknown to the world. Far above it rise other steps, hidden by the blue veil that divides the visible from the invisible. The true brother knows this, therefore, he works with an end far beyond the reach of human intelligence. He strives to become worthy to pass through that veil and join the legion of the elect. Far removed from all honors and praise, he bears the responsibility for human progress. His eyes are forever fixed upon the 7 stars that shine from some point at the very top of the highest step of the ever-ascending stairway. With hope, faith, and charity, he ascends the steps, and murmuring the Master's word to the guardian of the threshold, passes to the other side of the veil. It is then, and only then, that the true initiate is born. Only beyond that veil does the mystic student reach himself. The things we see around us are nothing more than forms, promises of something nameless, symbols of an unknown truth. It is in the spiritual temple, silently built, without the voice of the workers or the sound of the hammer, that true initiation is bestowed, and there, with the body purified, the student becomes a master mason, chosen from among other mortals to be an active and conscious worker in the name of the great architect. It is only there, hidden from mortal eyes, that the highest degrees are attained, and it is there that the radiant soul, with the light of the Spirit, is transformed into a living star beneath the blue canopy of the authentic Masonic lodge. Transmutation. Freemasonry is eternal truth, personified, idealized, and yet simplified. Only eternal truth can serve it. Virtue is its priest, patience its guardian, enlightenment its teacher. But the world cannot know this unless Freemasons demonstrate it in their daily lives. If its truth is divine, it must not be profaned or denigrated by the thoughtlessness of its guardians. Its temple is a sacred place, which must be entered with reverence. Material thoughts and dissensions must be left at the threshold. They must not enter. Only the pure of heart, regenerated and transformed, can pass through the sanctity of its veil. The schemer has no place among its pillars, nor the materialist in its sanctuary, for the Freemasons tread a sacred precinct, sanctified by the veneration of the ages. Let the tongue remain silent, the heart tranquil, and the mind still. In reverence and silence, stillness must speak. The voice of stillness is the voice of the Creator. Do your best for men through your light and power, but before God, what do you have to offer but humility? Your regalia, your insignia, and your jewels mean nothing to Him until your body and soul, radiating with the splendor of perfection, become living ornaments of the lodge. The presence of the Master. The Mason believes in the great architect, the living embodiment of the plan of creation, the master of all lodges, without whose spirit no work can be done. May he never forget that the Master is near. May he feel the presence of the Supreme Creator night and day. The ever-watchful eye is within him and upon him. Day and night, this great orb measures the depths of his innermost soul, judges his life, reads his thoughts, weighs his aspirations, and rewards his sincerity. Before this omnipotence, while maintaining a certain distance, he himself is personified, and to no one, and before no one else, must he answer for his actions. This mysticism goes with him from the lodge, and weighs the Mason in the world. This spirit is with him in his daily work, as well as at home. It judges him by the light of day and by the darkness of night. It hears his every indiscreet word. It is the silent witness to every transaction in life, the silent partner of every man. It is the jury that judges every human being. It is his own conscience. Let every Mason know that his duties include not only those of his narrow lodge, confined by walls of stone and brick, but also those of the Grand Universal Lodge, whose limits are the vast vault of the heavens. The Valley of Jehoshaphat awaits him who uses falsehood for any creature, just as surely as it awaits those who break the cosmic oath. The qualities of a true Mason. Every true Mason realizes that there is only one lodge, the Lodge of the Universe, and one brotherhood, composed of all who exist and move on any of the planes of nature. He knows, moreover, that the Temple of Solomon is truly the solar system of man, Sun, On, the King of the Universe, manifesting himself through the three primordial builders. He understands that his vow of brotherhood and fraternity is universal, and that minerals, plants, animals, and men are all included in the true Masonic workshop. His duty as an elder brother to all the kingdoms of nature, at their free will, distinguishes him as the creative craftsman who would rather die than fail in this great obligation. He has consecrated his life before the altar of his purified conscience, and is eager and joyful to serve those of lesser rank through the powers received from a higher hierarchy. The mystical Mason, by acquiring eyes to see beyond the legible ritual, recognizes the unity of life, expressed through the diversity of forms. The true disciple of the deepest Freemasonry has forever abandoned the worship of personality. With his powerful insight, he perceives that all existing forms and his position in relation to material matters are of no importance to him compared to the life gestating within himself. Anyone who allows worldly appearances or manifestations to distract him from the tasks he has assigned himself in the practice of Masonic life is a failure, because Freemasonry is an abstract science whose ultimate goal is complete spiritual development. Material prosperity is not a measure of the soul's aggrandizement. The true Mason realizes that behind these diverse forms lies one, linked to the principle of life, the radiance of creation in all living things. It is this life that he considers when measuring the worth of a brother. It is to this life that he appeals to recognize spiritual unity. He understands that the discovery of this spark of God is what makes him a conscious member of the great cosmic lodge. Above all, he must come to understand that this divine spark shines just as brightly in the body of an enemy as in that of his dearest brother. The true Mason has learned to be eminently impersonal in thought, action, and desire. The true Mason is not bound by any creed. He realizes, through the radiant light of his lodge's hierarchy, that as a Mason, his religion must be universal. Christ, Buddha, or Muhammad. The name matters less than the radiance of the light of the one who bears it. He reveres every sanctuary, bows before the altar, be it mosque, cathedral, or pagoda, realizing through his right understanding the unity of all spiritual truth. All true Freemasons know of those who are merely pagans, and who, although they have great ideals, do not live in accordance with them. They know that all religions are but one and the same legend, though told in different ways by people whose ideals may differ, but whose great purposes are in accordance with the same ideals he upholds. To the north, east, south, and west extend the different schools of human thought, and while human ideals may differ in appearance, it follows that once everything has been said, and crystallized forms, with their erroneous concepts, are set aside, only one fundamental truth remains. All that has been established, in essence, is a contribution to the building of the temple for which the Mason labors from the moment of his initiation. No true Mason can be narrow-minded, for his lodge is the divine expression of breadth. In no great work is there ever a place for narrow-minded individuals. The true Mason must develop the power of observation. He must be eternally searching in all the manifestations of nature for that which he intuits but lacks, due to a failure to work in the right direction. He must become a student of human nature and see in those around him the diverse and evolved expressions of a unified spiritual intelligence. The spiritual rite of his lodge is present before him in every act of his fellow Masons. All Masonic initiation is an open secret, for all can see it both on the busy avenues of a city and in the deepest recesses of the jungle. The Mason has sworn that daily he will extract a message for himself from ordinary life and incorporate it into the temple of his God. The Mason strives to learn all that contributes to the greater service of the divine plan, and to become the finest instrument in the hands of the great architect, in the eternal work of developing life through created things. The Mason also realizes that the vows, made of his own free will, give him the divine opportunity to be a living instrument in the hands of a master builder. The true Master Mason enters his lodge with a supreme thought in mind: how can I individually be more useful to the universal plan? What can I do to be able to interpret the mysteries that unfold here? How can I glimpse the secret of things that someone without spiritual vision will never intuit? The true Mason is supremely altruistic in every expression and application of the powers conferred upon him. No true brother seeks anything for himself, but rather undertakes altruistic labors for the good of all. No one who assumes a spiritual obligation can remain detached from its practice, otherwise he is unworthy of even the most menial of duties. The true light only reaches those who, even without great power, always cheerfully give all that they possess. The true brother of the order, however he may be working to improve himself throughout his life, mentally, physically, and spiritually, makes his own desires the focus of his work. He has a duty, and that duty is to be able to serve the plans of others. He must be ready, at any hour of the day or night, to set aside his own conveniences when called to action. The work must be done, and he has dedicated his life to serving those who know no bounds of space and time. He must therefore be ready at all times, and his life must become a constant preparation so that the call may sound when he least expects it. The Master Mason knows that those most useful to the work are those with the greatest life experience. This experience is not found within the roofed lodge, which is the foundation of his greatness, but rather in the problems of daily life. The true Masonic student is recognized by his fraternal acts and his sense of equanimity. Every Mason knows that breaking a vow carries a corresponding penalty. He must be allowed to understand for himself that failing to live mentally, spiritually, and morally in accordance with the highest ideals constitutes the greatest of perjuries. When a Mason swears to dedicate his life to building the ideal temple, but defiles his living temple by perverting mental power, emotional strength, and active energy, he is breaking a vow and consequently imposing upon himself not just hours, but periods of deprivation and spiritual misery. If he is a true Mason, he is even more obligated to repress the negative side of his own nature, which constantly tries to diminish the master in training. He must realize that a misdirected life is like a broken vow, and that daily service, purification, and the constructive temple of energy are a living invocation that builds within him and draws to himself the power of creation. His life, therefore, is the only prayer acceptable in the eyes of the Most High. An impure life is a broken truth, a destructive action is a living curse, a narrow mind is a strangling noose around the throat of its supposed greatness. True Freemasons know that their work is not secret, but they understand that it must remain unknown to those who do not live the true Masonic life. Even if the so-called secrets of Freemasonry were openly proclaimed, the fraternity would remain entirely safe, for special spiritual qualities are required for the true Masonic secrets to be understood even by the brethren themselves. Hence, the so-called expositions on Freemasonry, published in thousands upon thousands of copies from 1730 to the present day, cannot harm the fraternity. They merely reveal the outward forms and ritual ceremonies of Freemasonry. Only those who have been duly tested and deemed truthful, upright, and just are truly capable, through their own development, of appreciating the inner meaning of the order. To the rest of their brethren, within or outside the lodge, their sacred rituals will remain, as Shakespeare said, words, words, words. Only within the true Mason lies the hidden power which, emanating resplendently from within himself, constitutes the word of the authentic builder. His life is the only password that makes him admissible before the mystical Masonic lodge. His spiritual impulse is the acacia shoot which, through the darkness of ignorance, still serves as proof that the spiritual fire continues to burn. Within himself, he must cultivate those qualities that will make possible his true understanding with the order he is pledged to serve. It is possible to show the world mere forms that signify nothing, but the vitality they contain remains secret until the spirit is ready for its intimate revelation. The spirit of Freemasonry. Hiram Abiff represents the spirit of universal vitality. The martyred builder lies buried, awaiting the day or liberation when his faithful sons will free him from the universal work. The legend of Hiram Abiff is represented in many ancient cults and schools. His presence in Freemasonry demonstrates the antiquity of the craft's teachings. Freemasons, wake up! Your creed and the order demand the very best of you. They require the sanctification of your life, the regeneration of your body, the purification of your soul, and the ordering of your spirit. Yours is the glorious opportunity. Yours the momentous responsibility. Accept the task and follow in the footsteps of the Master Masons who, in the past, with the fiery spirit of the order, have illuminated the world. You have a great privilege, the privilege of enlightened work. You know the goals for which you labor, while many others, indeed the majority, still struggle in darkness. Your labors should not be confined solely to the lodge, for the Mason must radiate the qualities of the order. His light must shine in the home and in business, thus glorifying his association with his fellow men. In the lodge and beyond, the Mason must represent the highest fruition of sincere effort and be a model of faith and constancy in every endeavor he undertakes. So be it. The Master Mason knows that charity is one of the greatest hallmarks developed by the Elder Brothers, and that this means not only organized material charity, but charity of thought and action. He knows that not all workers are at the same level, but that wherever they are, they should strive to do their best, according to their understanding. Each person works with the tools they possess, and he, as a Master Mason, should not waste his time criticizing, but rather helping to improve those tools. Instead of blaming the poor tools, we should always take care of ourselves and be glad to have them. The true Master Mason finds no fault. He neither criticizes nor complains, but, with an absence of malice and a completely charitable spirit, seeks to demonstrate the truth of his Creator. He works in silence, suffers with compassion, and if those with whom and for whom he works mistreat him, his last word must be a prayer for them. The more upright the Mason, the more perfect his order, the more paternal he appears, the broader the scope of his lodge, until all living things are sheltered beneath the blue folds of his mantle. Working with the few, he seeks to help the many, perceiving, through his broad understanding, the weakness of others, as well as the strength of his own right. A Mason should not be proud of his position. He should not become vain with honors, but rather, with a humble heart, feel eternally responsible for his own post, representing, to the best of his ability, the transcendent importance of his order. The further he advances, the more he realizes he treads on shaky ground, and if for a moment he allows himself to lose his simplicity and humility, his downfall is inevitable. A true Mason never feels himself conceited or arrogant. A student may reach the summit of Fool's Mountain, satisfied with his own position, but the true Mason must always be an example of equanimity and simplicity. A Mason cannot be ordained or elected solely by ballot. He develops through ages or stages of self-purification and spiritual transmutation. There are thousands of Freemasons who are merely nominal brothers, because their inability to exemplify the ideals of the order renders them incapable of the responsibility for the teachings and aims of Freemasonry. Masonic life constitutes the first key to the temple, and without that key, none of its doors can be opened. When this fact is truly understood and lived, Freemasonry will awaken and utter its long-suppressed word. Then, the order will pass from speculative to operative, and the ancient wisdom, so long hidden, will emerge from the ruins of its temple as the greatest of spiritual truths ever revealed to humankind. The true Master Mason recognizes the value of seeking truth, wherever it may be found. It should make no difference to him if he finds it in the enemy's camp. If it is the truth, he will gladly pursue it. The Masonic Lodge is universal, therefore, every true Mason will seek the light throughout all realms of creation. The true representative of the order knows and applies a great paradox. He must seek the highest manifestations in the lowest places, and confront the lowest expressions in the highest. The Mason who raises an insurmountable barrier around himself closes the path to the light, and makes himself inaccessible to the rest of his brothers. This is a frequently committed error. It is precisely now, more than ever, that the world needs the ancient wisdom. Let the Mason who claims to uphold his doctrine through his life show his brother the glory of action. If he possesses the keys to the truth, let him open the door, and let him preach the doctrine so long professed with his life, not with his words, but with his example. The fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man must unite in the structure of the eternal temple, the great work, through which all things acquire being, and through it the glorification of the Creator, the priest of Ra. With what words could one describe, in modern languages, the great temple of Amun-Ra? Today, a heap of ruins stands among the sands of Egypt, but in the height of its glory, there rose a forest of plumed columns, supporting solidly structured roofs, lovingly sculpted by the hand of man, who transformed them into friezes of lotus and papyrus flowers, adorned with showy necklaces, with dyes whose secret has been lost even to civilizations that have discovered them. A floor laid out like a checkerboard, made of black and white blocks, stretched out until it disappeared into the forest of columns. From the massive walls, the impassive faces of unknown gods gazed down upon the silent rows of priests who kept the altar fire burning, its faint glow the only light illuminating the majestic chambers amidst the transparent darkness of the Egyptian night. It was a fantastic and awe-inspiring scene. The flickering lights cast strange, ghostly shadows from the granite masses, which rose like grand altars from the darkness below, only to vanish into the bluish shadows above. Suddenly, from the darkness emerged a figure carrying an oil lamp that pierced the shadows like a distant star, casting a strange light upon its bearer's face. He appeared to be an old man, judging by his long beard and braided grey hair, though his large black eyes shone with a brilliance rarely found even in young people. He was dressed from head to toe in blue and gold, and around his brow was coiled a serpent of precious metal, its eyes adorned with two gems that emitted a powerful light. Never had the light of Ra's chamber shone upon a more august head or a more imposing form than that of the temple's high priest. He was the spokesman of the gods, The sacred wisdom of ancient Egypt was imprinted in fiery characters upon his soul. As he crossed the enclosure, holding the priestly scepter in one hand and the fragile lamp in the other, he seemed more like a visiting spirit from afar, perhaps from the threshold of death, than a material being, because his jeweled sandals made no noise whatsoever, and the brilliance of his garments formed a halo of light around his majestic figure. Through the silent corridors, lined with enormous columns, past the fantastic figure, between rows of kneeling sphinxes and amidst avenues of recumbent lions, the priest made his way until, at last, he reached the vaulted chamber, whose marble floor displayed strange symbols inscribed in long-forgotten languages. Every corner of the multifaceted, shadowy chamber was occupied by a seated figure, sculpted in stone, so immense that its head and shoulders were lost in shadows too dense for any human eye to penetrate. In the center of the mystical chamber stood a large chest of black stone, sculpted with serpents and strange winged dragons. The lid was a solid slab of incalculable weight, without handles to indicate any means of opening it without Herculean strength. The high priest bowed, and with the lamp he carried, lit the fire on a nearby altar, casting the shadows of the fantastical chamber into its farthest corners. As the flame grew, the large faces of the angular figures sprang to life, their strange blind eyes seemingly darting at the black chest in the center of the room. Raising his staff with the sculpted serpent, and facing the dark marble chest, the priest exclaimed in a voice that was repeated successively by the echo of every corner and every crack of the ancient temple. "Plows, come here." Then something extraordinary happened. The heavy slab that formed the lid of the great chest slowly began to move as if lifted by invisible hands, and then, in the dark cavity, a slender figure appeared, reclining in white, with forearms crossed over his chest. It was the figure of a man of about 30, with long black hair flowing over his shoulders, forming a striking contrast with his seamless white garment. His expressionless face was as beautiful and serene as the enormous stony countenance of Amun-Ra himself, who gazed upon the scene. Silently, Aradamus rose from the tomb and slowly advanced toward the high priest. When he reached a representative of the gods on earth, he stopped and extended his arms forward in greeting. In one hand, he carried a cross with a ring at the top, which he offered to the priest. Aradamus remained silent, while the high priest, raising his scepter toward one of the large stone figures, uttered an invocation to the sun god of the universe. Having finished, he addressed the youthful figure in the following manner. "Aradamus, you seek to know the mystery of creation. You seek to be granted the divine light of the triple greatness and the wisdom that for millennia has been the only gift the gods bestowed upon humanity. You know little of the things you desire, but those who know them have said that whoever proves worthy can receive the truth. Therefore, remain here today, to demonstrate your divine and innate right to the learning you seek." The priest pronounced these words solemnly and slowly, and then directed his scepter to a great dark arch, above which shone in the gloom a winged sun of radiant gold. "Before you, above these steps and through these passageways, lies the path that leads to the eye of judgment and to the feet of Amun-Ra. Walk, and if your heart is pure as the garment you wear, and if your motive is selfless, your feet will not stumble, and your being will receive the light. But remember that Typhon and his deadly hosts lurk in every shadow, and that death is the consequence of failure." Aradamus turned and again crossed his arms over his chest in the sign of the cross. As he slowly advanced through the dark archway, the shadows of the great unknown closed in upon him. he who had dedicated his life to the pursuit of the eternal. The priest watched him until he disappeared from sight among the enormous columns beyond the somber arch that divided life from death. Then, slowly, falling to his knees before the gigantic statue of Ra, he raised his eyes to the shadows that, in the midst of the great night, concealed the face of the sun god, praying that the youth might pass from the darkness of the temple columns into the light he so longed for. It seemed as if, for a second, a flash crossed the face of the enormous statue, and a strange, serene, silent peace filled the old temple. The high priest, rising, relit his lamp, and slowly began his return journey. Its small light shone ever more faintly in the distance, until it was lost among the papyrus flowers and the temple columns. All that remained were the dying flames of the altar, casting strange, shifting glimmers upon the great open chest, and the stone images of the 12 judges within its walls. Meanwhile, Aradamus, his hands still crossed over his chest, continued slowly upward, as the last ray of the blazing fire that had illuminated the altar faded into the shadows he left behind. Through years of purification, he had prepared himself for the great ordination, with his body purified and his mind balanced. He continued his journey in and out of the pillars that loomed above him. As he moved forward, a faint golden light seemed to radiate from his being, illuminating the pillars as he passed by days. He resembled a ghostly form amidst a forest of ancient trees. Suddenly, the columns widened to form another vaulted chamber, dimly lit by a reddish mist. As Aradamus continued onward, swirling reflections of scarlet light appeared around him. At first, they seemed like swift, shifting clouds, but gradually they took shape, and strange, nebulous figures in flowing robes filled the air, stretching out their long, twisting arms to halt his progress. Phantoms of reddish mist hovered above him, whispering soft words in his ear, while fantastical music, like the roar of a storm and the cries of night birds, echoed through the soaring vaults. Aradamus, however, pressed on, full of calm and majesty. Among her black curls, the relief of her beautiful and delicate face formed a strange contrast with the sinuous forms that danced around her, trying to seduce him and divert him from his purpose. Indifferent to the strange shapes that beckoned to him from the fantastical archways, as well as to the pleas of their soft voices, he strode resolutely on his way, with only one thought in his mind. Fiat lux. Let there be light. A horrible discordant music grew louder and louder, ending in a distorted roar. The very walls trembled and the dancing figures fled like quivering shadows from a beacon, still trying to call out to and tempt Aradamus, finally vanishing among the columns of that temple. However the temple walls shook, Aradamus would stop. Then, with measured steps, he would continue his search for a ray of light, though finding ever deeper darkness. Suddenly, another door opened before him, flanked by obelisks of sculpted marble, one black, the other white. Through the threshold shone a small light, veiled by a very fine blue silk veil. As Aradamus, with a firm and slow step, ascended the staircase that led to that door, a whirlwind of fantastic mist materialized at his feet. The gentle heat emanating from it was mingled with a certain oily gas, filling the chamber with a nauseating odor. Then, from the cloud emerged a gigantic form, half human, half reptile. In its bloodshot eyes burned reddish flames of diabolical brilliance, while massive, claw-like hands advanced to twist and annihilate the fragile figure before them. Aradamus hesitated for a single instant as he saw the horrific apparition advancing, doubly terrifying because the fiery mist doubled its size. Then the neophyte, in his graceful white robe, advanced slowly again, his arms always crossed over his chest. he raised his handsome face, illuminated by divine light, and bravely confronted the fearsome monster. As he faced the menacing form, for an instant something like a thundering demon loomed over him. Suddenly, Aradamus raised the cross he carried and held it up to the monster. As he did so, the Ankh cross shone with dazzling golden radiance, and then, striking the oily, hideous monster, it seemed as if it dissolved into particles of brilliant sparks. Once the last particle of the guardian of the threshold vanished before the rays of the cross, a dart of brilliant light burst through the ancient halls, and striking the veil that hung between the obelisks, tore it in two, revealing a vaulted chamber with a circular dome, dimly lit by invisible lamps. Carrying his already blazing cross aloft, Aradamus crossed the enclosure and instinctively glanced upwards, towards the towering dome. There, floating in the air, high above his head, he saw a great closed eye encircled by dense clouds the colors of the rainbow. Aradamus gazed at the wondrous symbol for a long time, understanding that this was the eye of Horus, the all-seeing eye of the gods. He immediately fell into prayer to implore that the will of the gods might be made evident through him, and that, somehow, he might be worthy of the honor of opening the closed eye of the temple of the living God. While he stood thus, in motionless prayer, gazing upwards, his eyelids trembled. As the great orb gently opened, the chamber filled with a dazzling light of blinding power, which seemed to consume even the stones with its fire. Aradamus was bewildered. It seemed as if every atom of his being burned beneath the brilliance of that flash. Instinctively, he closed his eyes, afraid to open them again, for the brilliance of those infinite rays was so terrible that it seemed as if, after seeing them, one could only fear utter blindness. Gradually, a strange feeling of peace and calm descended upon him, and when he finally ventured to open his eyes again, he found that the brilliance had vanished, and that the entire chamber was bathed in a soft and wondrous light emanating from that powerful eye glimpsed above. The white robe he wore had been replaced by one of vivid fire, which shone as if under the reflection of thousands of smaller eyes born from the divine orbit above. When his eyes adjusted to the light, he realized he was no longer alone. 12 figures, also clad in white robes, surrounded him, bowing before him and holding a strange insignia of gleaming golden metal. Under Aradamus's gaze, all the figures pointed to something, and he, following the direction of those hands, discovered a ladder of luminous vibration that led beyond the dome, through that eye on high. In unison, the 12 told him, "That is the path to liberation." Without a moment's hesitation, Aradamus climbed the ladder, and, with steps that seemed barely to touch the rungs, ascended toward the dawn of the great unknown. At last, after ascending many steps, he reached a portal that opened slightly as he approached. A breath of morning air caressed his cheeks, and a ray of golden light played with the curls of his wavy hair. He stood atop an enormous pyramid. Before him was a resplendent altar. In the distance, far beyond the horizon, the sweeping sands of the Egyptian desert reflected the first rays of the morning sun, which, like a globe of fiery vibration, rose anew from the eternal east. As Aradamus stood there, a voice that seemed to rise from the heavens themselves intoned a strange chant, and a hand, emerging as if from the solar globe itself, placed a golden serpent upon the head of the newly initiated. "This is Khepera, the rising sun. Because you have been able to snatch the radiance of day from the clutches of darkness, the Son of the Spirit has been born in you from the shadows, and in the name of the living God we greet you as priest of Ra. Welcome." So be it. The blue and gold robe, hidden in the depths of the unknown, 3 silent beings weave the endless tapestry of human destiny. They are called the Sisters, known in mythology as the Furies or the Fates, who ceaselessly braid between their fingers a thin thread, the thread of life, which one day must be woven to become a living garment, the robe of the priest-king's exaltation. Mystics and philosophers throughout the world have understood this garment in different ways. For some, it is the simple yellow robe of Buddhism. For the ancient Jews, it symbolized the robe of the high priest. For other religions, the color may change, but the meaning remains the same. It is the garment of the glory of the Lord. For the Freemasons, it is blue and gold, the Star of Bethlehem, the bridal garment of the Spirit. 3 fairies weave the fabric of this living garment, but man himself is the creator of his fairies. The threefold thread of thought, action and desire binds him as he enters the sacred place where he seeks admission, the Hermetic Lodge, though, later, that same thread serves to weave a splendid covering, whose purified folds conceal the sacred spark of his being. We all want to look our best. Velvet and ermine robes were, and perhaps still are, known as symbols of rank and glory. But too many ermine cloaks have done nothing but cover barren hearts, and too many crowns have rested upon the brows of tyrants. For these are material symbols of earthly things which, in the material world, are too often misapplied, serving as symbols of something they are not. The true coronation robe, according to the pattern of heaven, is the robe of glory, the sober garment of the Master Mason. It does not belong to the material world, for it refers to his spiritual development, his deeper understanding, and his consecrated life. The garments of the high priest of the tabernacle were but symbols of his own body, which, purified and transfigured, gave glory to the life they clothed. The sound of the silver bells that tinkled with endless harmony from the edge of her garments represented a harmonious life, while the breastplate that rested among the folds of the chapel reflected in the facets of its gems the flashes of celestial truth. There is another seamless garment that, we are told, was often worn by the ancient brethren in the days of the Essenes, when the monastery of the humble Nazarenes stood amidst the silent grandeur of the slopes of Mount Tabor, reflected in the unfathomable waters of the Dead Sea. This single-piece garment was and still is woven from the intricate fabric of human life, which, once purified by upright motives and righteous experiences, becomes a most subtle weave of golden light. This light served and continues to serve to weave the purified garment of regenerated bodies, just as the white lambskin apron serves as an emblem for the pure, the sincere, and the innocent. Such are the requirements of the Master Mason, who imposes upon himself the renunciation forever of the pomp of this world and its vanities, striving to wear the seamless robe of the soul, which reveals him as a consecrated and accomplished master. With the eyes of our imagination, we can still see the humble Nazarenes in their modest white tunics, garments no royal ransom could ever pay for. These tunics are woven from the deeds of daily life, each event forming an endless tapestry, white or black, according to the motives that inspire our actions. Just as the Master Mason must work only according to his vows, he slowly weaves this modest tunic, drawing upon the transformed energy of his own efforts. It is the white tunic to be worn beneath the ceremonial vestments, its plain surface sanctifying him and preparing him to wear the robes of glory, which can only be worn with true dignity over the immaculate and seamless garments of his own life. When that moment arrives, and the candidate has fulfilled his task, when, purified and regenerated, he reaches the altar of wisdom, he is truly purified by the fire of the radiant flame that burns within his being. From him emanate torrents of light, and an immense multicolored aura bathes him in its radiance. The sacred radiance of the gods has found its resting place within him, and through him, renews its friendship with humankind. Until then, he is not a true Mason. That is, a child of light. That wondrous garment of which all the robes of the earth are but symbols, is made of the highest qualities of human nature, the noblest ideals, and the purest aspirations. Its possession is only possible through the purification of the body and selfless service to others in the name of the Creator. When the Mason embodies these powers within himself, a wondrous structure of living fire arises from him, like that which surrounded the Master Jesus at the moment of his transfiguration. This is the robe of glory, the blue and gold garment which, shining like a five-pointed star, announces that Christ has been born within it. The man, then, truly becomes a child of God. From the depths of his own being he radiates the rays of light that constitute the true life of the transcendent. That spiritual spark snatches from death the wounded hearts that have long lain frozen. It is the living light that illuminates those still buried beneath the darkness of materialism. It is the power that resurrects through the vigorous grasp of the lion's paw. It is the great light that, ever seeking its own spark within all living things, resurrects dead ideals and silenced aspirations through the power of the Master's eternal word. Then that Master Mason becomes a luminary, that symbolic lion who, descending into the crystallized tomb, raises the lifeless builder, snatching him from death with the Master's paw. Just as the sun fertilizes the seeds buried in the earth, so the Son of Man, resplendent with divine light, radiates from his own purified being mystical flashes of redeeming light that fertilize the seeds of hope, truth, and a nobler life. Discouragement and sorrow often bring down the temple, burying beneath its ruins the true purpose and the highest motives of life. Just as the glorious robe of the sun, symbol of all that lives, bathes and warms creation with its radiance, so too does this same robe, enveloping all things, shelter and preserve them with its light and its life. Man is a god in potential, and, as appears in the mystical myths of Egypt, he is molded on the potter's wheel. When his light arises to uplift and preserve all around him, then he receives the triple crown of goodness, and joins the multitude of Master Masons who, in their blue and gold robes, are engaged in dispelling the darkness of night with the light that must emanate from every Masonic lodge. Incessantly, the Furies weave the tapestry of human destiny. Through the ages, above the warps of fate, the vibrant garments of the sublime are woven. Some are rich in luminous colors and wondrous quality. Others are dull and frayed before they leave the loom of their origin. All, however, are woven by those three sisters, thought, action, and desire, with which the ignorant build walls of mud and tiles of mire between error and truth, while the pure of heart weave with those radiant threads garments of purest beauty. We may all wish, though not be able, to still those tireless fingers weaving the tapestry, but we can change the quality of the materials used. If we gave the three eternal weavers only materials of nobility and truth, the work of their hands would be perfect. The fabric they weave may be red, stained with the blood of others, or dark as life's uncertainties, but if we resolve to be truthful, we could restore its purity and weave from it the seamless garment of a perfect life. Such is humanity's most desirable gift on the altar of the Most High, and such is their supreme offering to the Creator. Friendship. What nobler bond is there than that of friend? What nobler compliment can be bestowed than friendship? We know how to easily break the ties and bonds of life, but throughout eternity there is one that endures perpetually, the bond of fellowship, the fellowship of atoms, of stardust in its infinite flight, of suns and worlds, of gods and men. The handshake of camaraderie should unite with an eternal bond, the fellowship of the Spirit, Who is more desolate than he who has no friends? Who feels more honored than he whose virtues grant him a friend? To have a friend is good, but to be a friend is even better. The noblest title ever given to humankind, the highest reward bestowed by the gods, was when the great God looked upon Prometheus and said, "Behold, a friend of humankind. He who serves humankind serves God." This is the symbol of the fraternity of your guild, for the plan of the sublime is sustained by the clasped hands of friends. The bonds of kinship may pass, but those of friendship remain. Serve God by being a friend to the soul of man, attending to his needs, illuminating his path, sweetening his way. Let the world spontaneously say of the Mason, "Here is the friend of all." Let us make the world say of the Lodge, "This is indeed a fraternity of brothers, comrades in spirit and in truth, the Emerald Tablet of Hermes." This ancient tablet was the first revelation of God to humankind. Although its mystery is virtually unknown to this era, it is believed to be one of the earliest representations of the Hiram legend. The Emerald Tablet of Hermes. Table Emerald. The Emerald Tablet of Hermes, which illustrates the following page, presents us with Hiram, the hero of Masonic legend. The name Hiram is taken from the Chaldean Shiram. The first two words in large characters signify the secret words. The second line, in large characters, Shiram Telat Mekasot, means Shiram, the universal agent, one in his essence, but three in his appearance. The translation of the table is as follows: "It is true and not a lie certainly, and upon this depends the agreement between the superior and the inferior, to carry out this one true and marvelous task. As all things owe their existence and origin to the one, so all things owe their origin to one thing, very hidden because the one God has so ordained. The father of this one thing is the sun, its mother is the moon, the winds carry it on their wings, but its nurse is the spiritual earth. This one thing after God is the father of all things in the universe. Its power is perfect, since it united with the spiritual earth. It separates this earth from the dense or coarse, a gentle warmth. To a great extent, this warmth ascends from the earth to the heavens, and descends again, purified, to the earth, and the superior and the inferior see their powers increased. Therefore, you will share the honors of the whole world, and darkness will flee from you. This is the most powerful of all powers. With it, you will be able to rule over all things and transform everything excellent and everything base. In this way the world was created, but the arrangements that followed are a mystery. For this reason, I am called Shiram Telat Mekasot, one in essence, but three in appearance. This trinity contains the wisdom of the entire world. Now I have finished what I had to say concerning the effects of the sun. End of the Emard table. In a rare and old unpublished manuscript that refers to the most ancient Masonic and Hermetic mysteries, we find the following information about the mysterious universal agent, known as Hiram. The meaning of the Emerald Tablet can duly convince us that the author was very well acquainted with the secret workings of nature, and with the secret work of the philosophers, alchemists, and hermeticists. Thus he also believed in the true God. For several periods it was believed that Ham, one of Noah's sons, was the author of this ancient monument. An ancient author of unknown name, who lived several centuries before Christ, mentions this tablet, and says that he had seen it at the Egyptian court. It was a precious stone, an emerald, upon which these characters were represented in low relief, not engraved. He reports that it was held in very high esteem and was around 2,000 years old, and also that the material of this emerald was once in a fluid state like molten glass, and in that state cast in a mold, and that to this fluid amalgam the artist gave the hardness of a genuine and natural emerald through his alchemical art. The Canaanites were called Phoenicians by the Greeks, who told us that they had Hermes as one of their kings. There is a clear connection between Hiram and Hermes. Hiram is a compound word made up of three words, referring to the universal spirit, from whose essence all creation has emanated, and which is the object of the genuine natural philosophy of the Chaldeans and Egyptians according to its principles or internal properties. The three Hebrew words, Kama, Ruach, and Majim, mean respectively fire, air, and water, while their initial consonants, CHR and M, give us Kiram, that invisible essence, Father, Mother of the earth, fire, air, and water. For although immaterial in its own nature like motionless electric fire, when it moves it becomes light and becomes invisible, and when it is brought together and stirred, it becomes heat, and fire becomes visible and tangible, and when it is associated with moisture, it becomes material. The word Hiram has been transformed into Hermes, and also into Herman, and the translators of the Bible have said Hiram, changing Chet to he, since both Hebrew letters are very similar. In the word hermaphrodite, invented by the ancient philosophers, we find Hermes changed into Herm, which means Hiram, or the universal agent, and Aphrodite, the passive principle of moisture, which was also called Venus, and which, it was said, had been generated and produced by the sea. We also read that Hiram, or the universal agent, helped King Solomon build the temple, undoubtedly because Solomon possessed the wisdom and knew what to do with the embodied universal agent. The Jewish Talmud says that King Solomon built the temple with the help of Shamir. Now these words signify the sun, which is perpetually gathering the omnipresent, surrounding, and electric fire, or spiritus mundi, and sending it to us, to this planet, in a visible form called light. That electric flame, embodied and regenerated in the philosopher's stone, enabled King Solomon to produce the immense quantities of gold and silver used to build and decorate his temple. These paragraphs from an ancient philosopher can help today's Masonic student realize the tremendous and unimaginable wealth of knowledge hidden behind the allegories he often hears but seldom analyzes. Hiram, the universal agent, could be translated as Vita, the power that eternally builds and develops the bodies of man. The use and abuse of energy is the hallmark of Masonic legend. Indeed, therein lies the key to all things in nature. Hiram, as the threefold energy, one in its source but three in its aspect, could almost be called ether, that hypothetical and unknown element that carries the impulses of the gods through the macrocosmic nervous system of infinity, for, like Hermes or Mercury, who was the messenger of the gods, ether carries impulse on its wings. The solution to the mystery of ether, or, if you prefer, of vibratory space, is the great problem of Freemasonry. This ether, as a hypothetical medium, supplies energy to the three bodies, thought, emotion, and action, and thus Hiram is one in essence, though three in appearance, mental, emotional, and vital. The task that follows is an effort to illuminate other forgotten and neglected elements of Masonic rites, and to underscore the spirit of Hiram as a universal agent. Freemasonry is essentially mysterious, ritualistic, and ceremonial, and represents abstract truth in concrete form. The earth or substance stifling energy, therein lies the mystery hidden in the sacrifice of the builder. The reason. What motivates the Masonic candidate to leave the world behind and ascend the chosen path toward the light? Truly, only he can know, for the motive for his actions lies hidden in his heart. Does he seek the light of the East? Does he seek eternal wisdom? Or does he offer his life upon the altar of oaths? Of all things, intention is the most important. Though we may fail time and again, if our motive is sincere, victory will be ours. But if the motive is dishonorable, though we may go from apparent triumph to triumph, we have failed. Enter the temple with reverence, for it is truly the dwelling place of the great spirit of Freemasonry. Freemasonry guides kings. By its hand, the destinies of nations have been forged, and the perfect fruit of its labor is the honest man. What nobler thing can be accomplished than to illuminate the unrest and dispel ignorance? Is there any greater task than the joyful work of service? And what other nobler man can there be than the Freemason who serves his enlightenment by becoming a light for his fellow men? The Egyptian initiation. Hail to you, Ra, Lord of the Law, whose sanctuary is hidden. Hymn to Amun-Ra. Death has been devoured in the light. Teacher's Book. Early Masonic historians such as Albert Mackey, Robert Freckey Gould, and Albert Pike were of a single purpose in their efforts to establish a definite correspondence between the Hiram legend of Freemasonry and the myth of Osiris as expounded in the initiation rituals of the Egyptians. In Morals and Dogma of the Scottish Rite, Albert Pike briefly summarizes Plutarch's writings on the allegories of the Osiris cult, and even draws attention to the possibility that the weeping virgin over the broken column is Isis, the mother of the mysteries, mourning the death of her husband and brother, whose body was hidden in the great pillar in the palace of the king of Byblos. Cleared of all taint of heresy by such an illustrious precedent, the modern student of Masonic philosophy and symbolism may turn his attention to the antiquity of the craft, secure from the scholarly examination of ancient theological and theogonic systems, yet adding luster to his order and credit to its name. Too long Freemasonry has strayed from its purpose into strange and irrelevant courses, but in every generation some of the better informed brethren, through their tireless efforts, have helped to preserve the high philosophical aspect of the order's symbols. It is truly regrettable, indeed tragic, that the great Egyptian initiation ritual, the soul's emergence into the light of the sun, through some accident, has been mislabeled the Book of the Dead. This latter term is fascinating to the popular imagination, but those who have attempted to correct this misrepresentation say that its restoration is virtually impossible. Recognizing Egypt as the cradle of superior culture and the highest philosophy, and admitting the almost undeniable evidence that the Egyptian mysteries were the progenitors of modern Freemasonry, it is sad that a critical dissection of the Egyptian theological system is hampered and made almost impossible by the relatively late and incomplete forms of the ancient writings already available on the subject. It is quite evident to the Egyptologist that papyri such as those of Ani and Hennefer are incomplete and inadequate interpretations of the older and more complete writings yet to be recovered. The Book of the Dead is a treasure of Masonic tradition. Those who can realize that the ancient work has significant meaning in everything, and are presented with it in its entirety, would make the whole subject of philosophy considerably clearer. A systematic effort is being made to make something more intelligent of the ancient funerary text by translating the hieroglyphs on and within the scripts, as it now resides in various museums in Europe and Egypt. Currently, it is only possible to speculate regarding the Masonic significance of this research, but it is safe to predict that if the truth is revealed, popular Freemasonry will have to give way to a deeper and, correspondingly, more valuable interpretation of its mission. Every serious member of the order should feel the importance of the coffin texts and the possible clues they offer to a more profound and valuable interpretation of the mass of symbols and allegories woven into the fabric of Freemasonry. Future events cast their shadows before them, and the most significant incidents are indicative of the nature of what can be expected. A remarkable shift has just emerged from the bewilderment that seems to be turning the entire subject of Egyptian mythology into further confusion. Some ancient writers, suffering from the poverty of acquired wisdom, apparently committed much of it to a lesser grade of papyrus, with the result that we have a priceless but ruinous monument to their scholarship. Egyptologists are quite inclined to view the archaic treasure as a Kabbalistic treatise, designed to make more or less systematically confusing fables understandable in the Book of the Dead. Intellectuals have declared the manuscript a meaningless jumble of metaphysical jargon. Of course, modernists, who deify, scoff at the possibility that the long-dead Egyptian scribe contributed anything of practical value to the enlightenment of this age. But ultimately, who is wise? Pilate's question remains unanswered. Perhaps this old parchment will prove to be the lost key to a very confusing situation. If the gods are revealed to be nothing more than personifications of great scientific principles, and theology is an exact science and not a hopeless confusion of doubts, the present century can be redeemed from the unhappy end to which its present attitudes would inevitably bring. The Egyptians were far ahead of their time. Long before the Christian era, Egyptian priests had traced the circulation of blood, composed books on anatomy and physics, developed glassblowing, licensed dentists and occultists. It was in the dark land of Chem that many had their beginnings in science, as did several noble schools of philosophy and ethics. During the empire's glory, priests served celestial fire, not only used in the mysteries of alchemy, but also as an abstract symbol of the supreme good. A philosopher wrote nearly 400 years ago and made a suggestion that modern archaeologists would do well to ponder. He said, "We must remember that the dark, worthless earth that apparently lies beneath our feet also produces the precious stones and metals that make up our most glorious adornments." Archaeologists seek physical, individual fragments, uniting science with philosophy, so why not sift through the dust of the centuries in search of intellectual treasures more precious than the splinters of the ancient empire? The second discovery is of more direct and intense Masonic interest. A papyrus from the Book of the Dead definitively demonstrates, through scribe S-marks and notes scattered throughout, that the strange document, supposedly dealing only with the fate of the disembodied spirit, was in fact a dramatic ceremony staged by living actors, presumably in the secret chambers of temples. The manuscript's current context makes it clear that the performance could have had nothing less than a sacred purpose, and the mutilated fragment bears witness to those who speak of arcane rites concerning the installation of an initiate into the cult of Osiris. While this has long been suspected by Masonic scholars, the evidence has already proven insufficient and will be received as one link in an endless chain. But the question that can also be asked is, what does all this mean for the average Freemason whose knowledge of Egyptology is hopelessly superficial? And what can he glean from the ancient symbols that will allow him to feel more deeply and apply more diligently the truths of his order? If the identity of Osiris and the Hiramic myths are accepted, then the Book of the Dead is the open sesame of symbolic Freemasonry, revealing a hidden beauty beneath the rituals, an unsuspected splendor in the symbols, and a divine purpose in the workings of the Masonic whole and procedure. The symbols of Freemasonry have been superficially interpreted for centuries, but even Albert Pike confessed that, as far as his research had allowed him to penetrate, the true meanings of the curious figures had been hopelessly lost, and he even feared their irreparable loss. Because of the lack of proper understanding, the entire mass of allegories is simply reduced to vain designs for action, and failing to impel the neophyte toward the realization of a nobler state, it is lost. The Egyptian mystery ritual originally referred to the realization of the curious and wondrous event known as the soul's emergence into the sunlight. Understanding this ceremony, and the principle upon which it was based, is indispensable for attaining wisdom. The second birth appears in the arcana of nearly all the great religions, and the conscious attainment of immortality was considered one of the principal products resulting from perfection. Who were the ancient hierophants of whom it was said that death had forgotten them? Who were the royal priests who were born from one age to another without dying? Yes, even Melchizedek. For it was said of the Prince of Salem that he was both his own father and his own mother. Jesus is described as being of the same end. He was a priest according to the order of Melchizedek. These were the immortals to whom the term phoenix was applied, and their symbol was the mysterious two-headed bird now called a double-headed eagle, a familiar and poorly understood Masonic emblem. Plato hints suggestively at the solution when he declares that the body is the tomb of the soul. The spirit within the body awaits liberation and freedom from the irrational form of the rational part, which must be achieved in one of two ways. The ignorant are freed either by necessity or through wise choice. Thus, in the fables of Egypt, those who leave the body and the sleep of death go forth at night and wander in darkness. But as they were accepted into the mysteries, they were instructed in the secret disciplines by which nature is prudent and emancipated from bondage without the ministry of decay. The true philosopher is freed from his darker side, which translates as Enoch, without tasting the bitterness of death. Of that enlightened and regenerated one I declare, he has come forth into the light of day. Therefore the mysteries were considered substitutes for death, and also as the second womb from which the initiate was born into the sphere of wisdom. In Egypt the mysteries, or institutions of philosophical rebirth, were called Isis, and those born in the temple were called children of Isis. Now, through the death of Osiris, her husband, this goddess had donned the trappings of mourning, and with the loss of the word symbolized by the phallus of Osiris, she had become the great widow. Heni, those born of her, the philosophical elect, were called children of the widow, a designation to which Freemasons have clung, even in this age. On an ancient column was an inscription translated thus by Diodorus: I am Osiris the king. I am the eldest son of Saturn. I was born from the bright and magnificent egg, and my substance is of the same nature as that which makes up light. This declaration reveals the condition of how he was lifted up by the strong grasp of the lion's claw. The bright and mysterious egg from which he emerged immortal is the temple, the house of the mysteries, the sphere of the sages. It is what would now be called a Masonic lodge, and it is from it that he arises, like Phanes, wearing a new body, the composite garment of light, that light which is transmitted to the soul by the glorious arcana of the ritual. Thus it is said that the candidate descends into the darkness of the grave, and having wandered through the grey halls of Hades, is reborn and received as resurrected from the tomb. The instruments and ornaments with which he is invested bear witness to his achievement, and he is regarded as something more than a mere mortal. He is of a race apart, and although he is not truly worthy of worship, he will always have the right to ultimate veneration. This high ethical order, this noble and sacred mystery, this is Freemasonry. Anything less is not Freemasonry, but the great purpose for which the order was conceived in the infancy of humanity. Thus, from the fragments that remain of the ancient Egyptian manuscripts and their commentaries, we receive great inspiration, an ennobling realization of our unique purpose. We are promised that if we faithfully serve and dedicate ourselves to the purpose for which the mystery schools exist, the Word will ultimately be restored, and with it will come the full understanding of this profound and sublime mystery of philosophy as the rational substitute for death.